Everyone, Jarlath here again with your roundup for week 2 as promised. Firstly, well done for all of the assignments that were submitted. There was lots of really good work, and you all receive your marks and your personalised feedback tomorrow, Wednesday, when that's released. A couple of general things that's worth saying on the assignments. So the marking rubric is there to provide a consistent approach to marking as part of our academic integrity. And it should also be really useful for you in ensuring that you include all of the elements required to score really high marks. That can probably gets a little bit more complicated as the weeks progress. But if you follow the marking rubric, as many of you did really well, and things like the word count, you've got a really high chance of building high grades there. So it's unlikely that you'll be able to include all of the elements that are required in the depth required if, for example, you only use half of the recommended words. And equally, on the other side, we do penalise for exceeding the word count. So, like most or even all business schools, we're trying to encourage punchy, concise, impactful answers. So do keep an eye on that. A couple of you did exceed the word count there. As is often the case, we've had a couple of extensions and submission errors and things. No problem. That will happen. You'll all find your rhythm of the course. Where that has happened, we've had a couple of assignments submitted today, so you're unlikely to get them turned around and released tomorrow, but we will do that as quickly as possible. My final point on the assignments is for the whole course is that we operate obviously within the UK, and within the UK 70% is considered a first class or a distinction, and therefore represents an excellent piece of work, especially on a written piece of work. So it's easier, of course, on a spreadsheet to achieve 100%. If the numbers are right, then it's right. And we did see that this week. Quite a lot of you have scored really highly on the second part, which was the spreadsheet and the graph, and a little bit lower on the framework. So just keep an eye on that, but also bear in mind, like I say, 70% is considered our benchmark for a really good grade. I know in some countries, you might get 90, 100%. That's not likely to happen, especially on the written pieces. So if that does happen, it's a really exceptional piece of work. Okay, on the discussion forum, this week we're selecting an investor for Athleta. And after a really good start last week, you've continued that, and your contributions have been fantastic this week, especially in the last couple of days. So I would kind of nudge you towards trying to start that conversation just a little bit earlier in the week. What can be really useful is to have an initial, oh, here's what I'm thinking, and then by the time you've gone through more of the material, come back, see what other people have said, and let that conversation build. That said, I'm impressed with quite how well you've done given how late that conversation started. It has been fantastic in the last day or two, so I don't want to be too picky on that. So really well done with the contributions. If you can get in there earlier and start that conversation and allow yourself to come back to it a couple of times, that will help yourself and others. So we were guided to consider whether VC funding, angel funding, or commercial banks were the best option. Great. Yeah, obviously all three have pros, and you put those forward well, and at least one of you supporting each of those options. So that was great. That's good to see. Overall, I think there was more support for angel investors, with some subtleties in there. I think, talking about trying to, you were aware of the kind of almost the downside of needing maybe 15 to 20. So you were looking at other ways of doing that, of potentially angel investors that would take a big chunk of that by themselves. So celebrities or sportswomen, etc., etc. Other people looking at hybrid funding models and concluding that there's combinations that were better than any single option. Absolutely valid. Again, good points. Great to see you thinking outside of the box. A couple of other things as well that were outside of the box. Great to see all of that. I suppose just a slight caution on complexity, which might be a concern with this option at this stage, as they need to avoid sort of being pulled all over the place. So by now you'll have seen Juanita's video with the conclusion that VC funding is the most viable option. So obviously don't worry if that wasn't your conclusion, as the main takeaway here is understanding the advantages and disadvantages of each option, and you discussed those really well. So you've clearly got a grip on that. I suppose one other thing to say on case studies, so again, very much aligned with the way that business schools do things. So we have the option to bring in our own experience and skills and things into the case study that we're looking at, but just being careful that we are looking at the business in question at the time in question. Which again, I think a couple of you have referenced things which would now be options but weren't options back then. Again, that's great thinking. Really like that. Really appreciate that. And of course, just being clear, well, it wasn't an option then, but maybe just reflecting how things might be different now. So that's fantastic. Really good again. So I think that's all from me this week. So thanks for the engagement and please keep it up. Next week, we move on to looking at the venture capital valuation method. Enjoy and keep the momentum going. And please reach out to Paul or myself if there's anything we can help with. See you all next week.